Let's go look at Hong Kong. Ticker HSI. Hang Seng Index Futures. Is Hang Seng Hong Kong? I didn't think Hang Seng was Hong Kong. There is HSI there, Hang Seng Index. Let's go with the trading view chart. It looks to me like we have looked at this before. Basically a level 2 concept, really simple. Market structure. How do you draw trend channels? Actually, I see a lot of people on social media get this completely wrong. But in essence, this trend is validated on the actual structural fail right there. You draw your trend line, boom, boom, and then you drag the third point of the trend line, ironically enough, back against the most recent pivot high or low. So I guess that would be in there. You might want to go against that low. You might want to go against that low. Interesting how that low in particular did line up with that low. But I actually think I would prefer to go there off of that level. There is your channel. Nothing's really changed a heck of a lot here. Might even want to look, maybe this is a weekly chart too. So, interesting. This is actually a really good analogy. I was a broker building my book of business all through this bull market. This is that big China building out its economy into the 2008 Olympics. And then you notice 2007, January 2008, basically that was the end of the bull. And then there was the Summer Olympics. Once the Olympics were over, they just pulled the floor out from underneath the market. Whoosh. And actually, I think they did the exact same thing back in the 1990s with the hand transfer of Hong Kong back to the Chinese, and that was this. So they built everything up, rah rah bull, everybody's getting rich, nice and happy-go-lucky. Then literally they had the transfer, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was July of 1997. June 30th, 1997. So you tell me, June 30th, right there. Was that a date that you should have? Can you see how this is buy the rumor, sell the news? Remarkable. And this was actually what they called the Asian contagion. And I hate to say it, but I actually think there could be a very similar kind of event here in North America in 2027 as there was here. And I remember specifically in here, the Koreans were running out in the streets and throwing all of their silverware into the streets to defend the Korean currency because there was just a massive run on all of the currencies in Asia because of this. Interesting too, dot-com boom, right? So, this was basically dot-com boom. This was the dot-com bust. And then through here, this was sort of like, all right, China won their Olympics bid. They got together with the Americans, created this sort of unholy alliance, pegged the Chinese currency, whole damn thing, and that led to this big bull run. Chinese Olympics pulled the carpet out, and you can see, ironically enough, where was the bottom in the market. Everybody, of course, here in North America calls this the Great Financial Crisis, when I would actually make the argument, actually, this was nothing more than an unwinding of the stupidity of this bull market. And really, this had absolutely nothing to do with North America whatsoever. It had everything to do with China. Americans come in, guarantee all their paper, bail out Freddie Mac. Of course, the Chinese were suckered into buying all those U.S. bonds, and I think the Chinese told the Americans, look, you don't buy these bonds back from us at face value, we're going to bankrupt your country. And so the Americans, all the banksters, all got together and said, gee whiz, we don't want the party to end. All right, what's the solution? I know, let's go turn the printing presses on. We will just give them freshly minted U.S. $100 bills for all these U.S. government bonds that they were suckered into buying. So they transferred all those bonds, all that money printing, of course, created this world that we live in now. I suppose you could argue COVID market. I guess this was the COVID dump. I think you could make the argument that the Chinese dream was actually over. I think the Chinese dream was over here. This was nothing more than sort of a reactionary move. And of course, in the Chinese market, things went absolutely insane there. Their real estate market just, whole cities being built where nobody lives in them. Just absolute atrocious economics. But what the fuck, eh? If anything, it just goes to show if you're a totalitarian dictator and you got the hegemony currency by the short and curlies, you can dictate any policy you want. At some point, it will come home to roost. And I think, the Evergrande and all that kind of stuff was the market saying, look, we just can't take any more of this bullshit silly, stupid economics. Having said that, I think, the benefit of drawing trend lines, obviously respected, rejected. Interesting how we re-accepted, then look at that rejection there, really nice. And I think probably once this market structure comes in here, this trend line's now is basically over. So now we're living in a new world. This trend, I think, is dominating. I think you can make the argument that, this is definitely the upper part of that trend channel, and now this is the lower part of that trend channel. As capitalism goes, I think dangerous times in China right now. You probably would make the argument that as they're dealing with the housing bubble and the credit bubble is finally broken, this is when things like totalitarian dictatorships are the worst, because they know that the free party is over. So it's just a question of how the hell do they get from here, which is a really bad situation, to there, where people have forgotten about the bad debt. Maybe they money print their way out of the debt situation, hyperinflate their economy, blah, blah, blah. And we get back into a favorable environment again. If I'm not mistaken, I think there was a Chinese Olympics in here as well. Ironically enough, in the Western markets, you really see this really well. But I think that the Olympics was right there. I think to all intents and purposes, the Chinese kind of wanted to keep everything sort of uppy into that Olympics event. And then literally as soon as the Olympics event happened, a week later, fucking Vladdy went in there and started murdering people in Ukraine. But I'd also argue too, to a certain degree, that the action that you're seeing in Ukraine was basically a cover. It was a distraction to try and get people not focused on the fact that technically China's bankrupt. And it's a totalitarian dictatorship, and life in China is going to be pretty challenging going forward here, folks. Until this message of the market changes, I can't really see any reason to be bullish of China at all. Interesting how these lows were a V bottom. It is interesting too that if we go back to the screener, and this is where these kind of screeners are just so awesome. I think I showed you. We did have things like bullish key reversals out of the Hong Kong index there. Yeah, we had the Hong Kong issue an outside upside key reversal here on the weekly charts back in November. We go back to that chart. Where the hell was that? Oh, well, it turns out that bullish key reversal signal was right here. Didn't have it on this HSI, this Trading View Index. I'm not quite sure what proxy it was. Let's see, what is this? EWH. This is more specifically Hong Kong, which I suppose... I did make mention to this the other day, and I still fully believe this. Winnie the Pooh can't fucking destroy Hong Kong, because if he does, this is his only source of real money. The Hong Kong pegged US dollar, the Hong Kong dollar, the renminbi, right? It's pegged to the US dollar. He needs those dollars, or else the whole damn Chinese fugazi collapses. I suppose if you look at that price action, you see there is the outside upside reversal. Interesting how this wasn't a key reversal. This was only one weekly reversal, so I'm not quite sure what the system was seeing there. Might have been a different signal. Weekly bullish key reversal. Let's see what that said. Always a challenge, the data that we get. Well, actually, wow, isn't that interesting? That was way over there. This was an engulfing bar. Wouldn't come up as a key reversal, but still a bullish sign. And then I guess the key reversal actually was that bar there. A little bit late to come in on the buy side, way up there, I think. Probably the way I would look at this is, what do you think the odds are that this failure was in Collins' dump chaser zone? I'd say probably pretty good. Yeah, there you go. If you wanted to participate, and this is actually a really, really good analogy of this. If you wanted to participate in this bear, do you go and get all bearish down here? Probably not. You want to wait for the technical dead cat bounce back into resistance, Collins dump chaser zone. You might even argue against this high here, that high there. Looks like there's a gap that might, these gaps needed filling in. I suppose there was holes all the way down, all the way along here. You might even argue that, hey, reload zones are all the way up here, and there's the 200 SMA. Could we have one more push up here? Especially to screw all the early shorters that came in and maybe sold that empire top. Maybe 50% level, Collins pump chaser zone. You got 8s and 9s on the Tom DeMark. So you know how much Julian loves that kind of signal. In comes an empire. Remember we were talking about NVIDIA with Sjord there. What would a topping pattern look like that he could actually hunt? Well, you know, this also too, interestingly enough, is actually also an island top as well. And that is taught in the level 2 program. But notice how this one candle that's shooting stars got a nice little hole on that side. And it's got a nice little hole on that side. This is actually what's called an island. This one candle is floating out on its own as an island. So interestingly enough, had you had the balls, it's a difficult trade, don't get me wrong. But if you saw that the market was starting to melt down here after gapping lower, that in itself, just a break of that low, is actually a sell signal as well. You know, that's probably a little bit advanced for just, you know, especially level oneers. What I would say is you got a half decent empire top there. Very difficult trade to take. Not going to say it's easy. You can see the market actually opened up down here. So a gap lower. There was a counter trend rally right into this, and then we started to stall out and started to melt back down. And that would have been on that meltdown, whatever that failure was right in that little wick there. That's probably where you'd want to short. You had actually asked us to look at this at the end of March. And so March, I guess that would just be like, I don't know, let's go 20th. What day was that? That was March 23rd. All right, well, so that would just be that date there, we'll say. What can I make out of this? I would just simply say, this is a V bottom, and we all know V bottoms, by definition, like to be tested. You could argue that this tail was a V bottom. Yes, the market bounced back up, but by definition, V bottoms like to be tested, and you can see how we had to roll over and test that low. I think you can also make the argument that this is a V top. The market actually is clearly identifying trading range here. I would say that the top of your trading range is that 22.65, and the bottom of your trading range is $16. You might even pull up your momentum indicators and notice this was a higher high, higher high, higher high. You'd say, well, show me a new high and I'll show you a buy, Brian. But I'd also say that we probably see that this push to new highs, this push here, not nearly as strong as the pushes from here, which creates that concept of divergence. So we pull up our momentum indicators. Actually not bad. Actually a lot better than I was expecting. No real signs of divergence here on the weeklies, but you can definitely see that momentum is rolling over here. We probably actually see it on the dailies. Let's see what we have there. All right. Yep. You see it in glorious Technicolor here. So on your dailies, nice bullish divergence here, which would get you thinking, hey, uppy. And then remember we had that big bullish engulfing bar off of the bottom. Very sloppy chart. And of course on the daily chart, this is just looks like pothole central. You know, at some point we're going to have to come back down and fill in all of these holes. But the point that I was trying to make there earlier was you can see the momentum push off of the lows. Big push up. And this push maybe still pretty big, but not as big. And then this push, well, not so big. And then this push, almost nothing. In a weird sort of way, you can graphically see the momentum waning. And that's where we see it in things like MACD indicators. Lower high, lower high, lower high. And actually now, you know, Sjord, hey, we're going through zero lines. We're actually negative here. So massive bearish divergence there. Willie, of course, very stupid. So if you got sucked into the buy side here in this market, you haven't listened to anything that I've been trying to teach you guys. It's just that simple. RSI, you know, Julian, he loves his RSI. We should probably even just do a course on this RSI. You saw that FE, he's really big on the RSI as well. You notice huge bearish divergence through here. Ironically enough, from an RSI perspective, this thing's actually really trending down until this trend line is broken. And who knows how long that could take. You know, I won't get into the 3 lower highs and 3 lower lows and stuff, but I might argue that the failure up here was probably when you should have been thinking topping and probably getting out of longs. Notice also too, there is the 50 line right in there. So that's pretty close. This breakdown through here was probably sort of your trade signal as we go through that 50 line, you know, and then we have to, you know, I would draw this as teal. if I remember correctly. And then something like this would be yellow, going through the 50 line and be like, uh-oh, we got trouble. So that's something like right in there. And so the question ultimately is, what did price do on that event? So yeah, there's your sell signal on RSI, the lower highs and lower lows concept. And you can see on price itself, that is technically a double top. It's not really pretty. If we change that to a line chart, you'll see it, right? Up, down, up, fail. And that's your sell signal. So it looks to me like we're working a sell pattern here. We keep making lower highs and lower lows. I suppose, as we did on the way up, we probably do exactly the same logic on the way down, heading into Collins. In this case, it would be the pump chaser zone. We should probably see some support around 38.2s to 50% levels. So, gee whiz, look where we are right now. What a surprise. There we are. And the issue that I have here is this is Swiss cheese. We really should fill in all of this. This is just a mess. Can't really get too excited on the buy side there. I would say, though, the fact that we made a lower low, how's momentum looking? Is momentum making lower lows? What a great analogy. Remember, we had that double top breakdown right in there. There's your trade. But you can see on a trending perspective, huge bearish trending signal from the moving averages there. They are still very much bearish. There's no reason to think bull there whatsoever. I'd also say too, it doesn't look symmetrical, so it's probably not valid, but it'd be interesting to check in with a guy like David O and whether he sees a big old head and shoulders here. Because that to me sure looks very head and shoulders-y. So this is actually a pretty key pivot level. Notice we've got all of the moving averages all pointing down. Fast is now actually crossing the very slow 200 period moving average. Just the 30 period moving average is still just above. But if 30 now slips below 200 with this still being negative, that is a very, very bearish vote. So be careful, all you bullish Hong Kongers. This looks extremely dangerous. What else can we say here? Oh yeah, we wanted to see whether there was some divergence here yet. Yeah, so you can see we made a lower low here. We made a higher low here, even though we made a lower low in price. No divergence has actually been confirmed yet, though. This is what we would call potential divergences. Now, remember, this was as of when you asked me to look at this originally. So my response would be at this point, we've got the pump chaser zone. So if we did start to see things like 3 higher lows, then maybe we can start thinking about like bullish bot setups. So that would be sort of like boom, boom. So 33, but no more than 66. And if we started to paint 3 higher lows, then we can start doing things like bot trades. Interesting how that recent high now is going to be your pivot level. Then, of course, if you get 3 higher lows, maybe you can front run that trade, see if you can sneak your way in off of something like that. And then there's your risk window, and there's your potential reward window. Hugely attractive trade setup. We're nowhere near that. And if anything, I'd be concerned the fact that we did break this low. Now, we didn't do it on new momentum pushes. So I would say that this is not a good place to be thinking about selling. If anything, you're probably just cooling your jets in this. And really simply put, we'll leave the bot levels on here. Probably if I did want to short, I think I'd probably actually even want to wait for some sort of reload zone test, which would just be a test of these highs, maybe fill in the gaps up here and see if you could get maybe like a and then a nice little M top to try and get short on some sort of failure like that. So if you had asked me on this particular day, I would say you're too late to sell because there was your sell signal there, and you're too early to buy. Any dead cat bounce that develops might actually set up another shorting window. That would be my very specific answer. Now, let's go see what actually happened. Well, indeed, it does look like that probably was not a good place to go short. The market did work its way up, and you can see it is working its way up. Fascinating how the bot level And we often see that half of the reason why the bot I like so much is because markets will literally set the damn trade up right off of that bot level. And so seeing 8s and 9s start to develop here, right at the bot level, what a surprise. We didn't get the pop up top here into reload short zones that I would hope. And if anything, now you can see, yes, the 30 SMA did come down and kiss that 200 SMA, but now we're actually starting to get, this would be, I would call this the moving average sort of crunch, or, like everybody's all kissing each other, all coming together. If I wanted to buy now, we probably have those bull divs starting to confirm. Let's see if they did. Yep, so the RSI bull div did confirm. But notice, like how the RSI just came up right up against that trend line. Remember, we had said this is not a bull until this trend line is broken. So we're at kind of an interesting situation here where I think momentum wise would probably look something like that. So a little bit of back and forth here seems warranted. At this point, I would say that there is your playground. And really, we won't know for certain which way this thing's going to break. It is interesting that that is basically the 50 line. So you might even argue that, RSI fans, although you have major conflicting signals, you could actually make the argument that we actually had a bit of a momentum buy come in there. Let's see where that is. That is basically, and I guess that kind of makes sense, because in essence that's confirming this. It almost looks like an inverted head and shoulders here, and that is all your moving average, everything all crunched together. So now at this point, all the moving averages are actually acting as support in the marketplace. Still like the idea. I would say that if I was thinking short here, probably want to see a rally up into this reload short zone up in here, and then look for a failure. I don't know. I mean, I suppose if we go and M out here, because this is, what is this? Collins dump chaser zone, 38.2. I mean, I'd have to see a pretty good looking top come in here. And the fact that momentum is still pushing up. I don't see any failure there. Don't see any failure there. Don't see any failure there. Don't see any failure here. I wouldn't say that there is a trade to be done here just yet. It's going to have to let this fill out. And probably what ends up happening, like I said, these moving averages are support. Probably ends up happening as we bang against the moving averages on any kind of weakness. Maybe NVIDIA, like we said, with Sjord, we see a bit of a sort of punch in the nose. Obviously Russia's going to have some sort of retaliation to the Finland being added to NATO. I mean, there's no way that can go unanswered. I mean, maybe they launch a fucking nuclear war. Who knows? But the point here is we could see some major shock to the market here. Pull back into the moving averages. Then you'll find out whether this top is for real. So kind of like I said with NVIDIA, we probably want to see some sort of sharp pullback, in this case into the moving averages. Then a counter trend rally. And then, anybody who follows trend lines with me and trend line doctrine, we want to see an M on the other side of this trend line to actually set up the trade. So something along those lines. And then, the moving averages all start rolling over, and that would set up a new sell signal. So this is probably, what is that? That's probably, easily a few weeks, if not a month or two. Probably a month down the road. And then, of course, look what we got coming up here. What are we supposed to do in May? Something in May and go have some fun with the girls or boys or houseplants or whatever. So would it make sense that maybe we get some sort of topping pattern that comes in over here in through May, and maybe this whole market has to just take a bit of a pause through May, and then we find out through June whether this bot is actually for real or not. And I suppose we should probably move this up to there. Do we get some sort of floor that comes in here? I suppose that would be a little bit higher. Is this low for real? Do I have 3 higher lows? And then we can start thinking about that bullish ABC to take us higher. ABCD. Well, there you go. I hope that helps a little bit with what you're seeing out of the Hong Kong market. Thank you.